that are still with us in the chat. If you didn't play the games, respectfully get out unless you are okay being spoiled, because what we're going to do is talk about our theories, our predictions, our expectations for the finale. Sad. I'm so sad this is the last episode, but episode 9 of the last episode on HBO. So final warning, we're going to be spoiling what might happen. I don't think we'll get into game 2 spoilers, but hey, gloves are off. Expect that you can be spoiled on anything starting now. Kayla.
Man.
We didn't get to talk about this last week because our episode went so long about kind of expectations of the Ashley Johnson character.
Yes.
But
I was in the chat.
Yeah. Well, so she wasn't in episode 8, so we know she's going to be in episode 9.
Yes.
But I'm curious. I have my own theory, but I'm curious where your head's at, like what you expect to see from her in the finale, and then also just like general other, like what do you think is going down in the finale next week?
Man, okay, so it's been a little while since I have played the game.
Okay.
So I think I remember how we get to the end in the game. Like the sequence of events that happens. I know both of us haven't gotten to do our review podcast for the last episode, and I'm chomping at the bit to talk about it. It's honestly, and we played around with the idea, and I would love to do this, to have you guys on to rank all of the episodes.
Would love that. I think
would love to do that at some point, but this is up there for me as like one of my favorites.
For sure. Yeah. It's I don't know if it's going to top episode 3 for me, but it's the closest so far.
Episode 3.
Yeah, it's the closest so far of kind of topping that, because it was a really intense episode.
Yeah.
But in terms of like adaptation, man, they nailed it. It was like one of the best adaptations of that story. But my concern with the finale, and it's something that I've talked about before on our little kind of end of the episode discussions here on Spotlight Games, is this next episode is only 43 minutes. It's the shortest episode of the season. And like thinking through
it could be the longest.
It really could. It could have been a 2-hour episode. Like, I know, like when you finish the winter segment, the David segment of the game, there's really only like an hour and a half left. And most of that is gameplay. So like, I understand like 43 minutes probably makes sense, but I still think there's like so much that you can do and expand there, because we know that at some point we're getting a flashback to the character that Ashley Johnson's playing, which is not in the game, because Ashley Johnson is Ellie. So I wonder if we're going to get our another cold open like we did on episodes 2 and 3, where or I guess no, 1 and 2, not 2 and 3, 1 and 2, where I wonder if we start the episode with her and whatever story that is. Because in the little preview at the end of last episode, we saw an infected like running at her. So I think it's safe to assume we're gonna. I hope we get like a solid like 5 to 10 minutes of that.
Me too.
But then it's like, but that's only like 30 minutes.
Yeah, and then because we don't know in the games, we know nothing about her like parents, or really nothing.
Right.
And so, but I keep in my head knowing that like the Bill and Frank episode was like the biggest diversion, they said, from the game. Right. So obviously we're not going to get like a change. And I guess what they meant by that is diversion of like not the path of the game, not necessarily additional content, maybe. So I'm curious to see what they do with the flashbacks. I think what happens is we open with a flashback. We see Ashley Johnson. I think it jumps right into like, because I think the screenshots and like things we've seen are like her holding a baby, right? Like, and so I think we don't get anything really before that. I think that's kind of like what we open with, and maybe seeing their death potentially, and how Ellie gets with Marlene. And like what that Marlene's connection to them potentially.
I feel like this is going to be a big Marlene episode.
Yeah. And maybe it's almost Marlene's backstory, maybe, that we get.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
And we're seeing snippets of how Ellie ends up in her care potentially.
Yeah. Because
she's a big part of this episode.
Right. Yeah. Because so the only thing that we know from the game about Ellie's mom, when you play as Ellie a little bit, in the section that they just covered in the show, in the David section, if you open up your backpack, there's a note from your mom. I think her name is Anna, I believe. And it's just like it's like talking about like, I think she wrote it like right after Ellie was born. It's like, I'm so proud of you. Like all these things, very, very lovely. And that's like it. And then there's some dialogue, and like, another like collectible in the game is, in the last segment of the game, you can pick up these little like, what do you call it? Like recorders where people in this, like in the hospital where this last episode is going to take place, kind of like talking about like what's going on. And so I feel like, and then, so all that to say, like, I'm pretty sure Marlene talks a little bit about her in those, like not a lot, but like some passing comments about who Anna was. And so I think that the connection with Marlene, I think, is a really good call. And I think,
I think that that's for sure going to happen, like in some aspects. Like obviously I don't know exactly like how we'll get there and what have you. But here's another thing I'm curious about. Do we think it's going to end right where the first game ends? Do we think so. They have to, I feel like, in order, because like I feel like that's set up to make such great TV, you know, and rip your heart out and like just make you scream.
I would be shocked if the final shot isn't the exact same final shot from the game, just like on her face, I would think. Because it's Liz in the chat. It's such a good ending. And that like the implication of that little bit of dialogue between her and Joel is like, that it'll feed people for however, because it's probably not going to be, it'll probably be more than a year before we get.
Me and Jericho were talking about that. I think so.
Terry in the chat, I want to know when, if we see Abby. I wonder.
Next.
Yes, I wonder, similar to episode 6, where there's like a little Dina hint. I wonder if there's going to be a little. I would love that. I would, Terry. I never even considered that. You're a genius, my friend. I would love that. That would be really, really cool.
I was thinking about that because obviously, like, if you haven't played the second game, this isn't really a spoiler. I mean, kind of. But either way, you might want to be careful.
You know,
we get excited. You know?
Yeah, we might spoil something from the second game. So if you didn't play it,
because like, you know, she's there. We know she's there, but you don't see her obviously in the second game. But upon reflection in the second game, like, you know that she's there.
And it would make sense. Fully spoiling the second game in a way. No. Yeah, Terry, don't apologize. We said at the beginning of this we might spoil game 2.
Oh yeah, it's fine. We clearly were very excited. So
right, yes. Something that the second game does, right, is there's the doctor in the first game that's like a faceless or nameless person, and then they're like, oh, this was actually an important person. So it would be cool if they cast someone who will then come back next year as the doctor and like connects those dots. Like that'd be cool, because like if you go back to the original game, he looks nothing like the doctor that they ended up having in part 2, but it's fine. Like the doctor was such a small part that it was just a means to an end. So that's a really fun idea. I would love to see that. But then it kind of goes back to my first kind of concern, is that 43 minutes is not a lot of time to do all that stuff. The giraffe, which better fucking be here.
Yeah, I agree. If I don't have the giraffe, I got kind of triggered a couple of episodes ago when the monkey scene. I was like, "Where's the giraffe?" And Jericho was like, "This is not where this happens." And I was like, "Where is it?" And she was like, "Kayla, it's not this episode." And I was like,
for sure.
Wait,
but like,
right.
I think this episode, like, there's so much good shit in the game. Like, it's. If you listen to this episode, if you listen to JK Games, you both know that like we're super fans of this game.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most impactful storytelling moments in both games is in this section, because it starts. I've been doing this thing for Spotlight TV where I'm playing alongside the show.
Oh, nice.
So that I can like have that kind of perspective of like, oh, well, they did this differently or whatever, and not like kind of be like reaching into the depths of my memory.
That's me.
And this section, of what this episode will be covering starts off with Ellie looking at, because they're by a zoo. It starts off with her looking at like an outline of a deer. And that like connection of like, this is her, like she is remembering all of the stuff that you just went through because of shooting the deer and all that stuff. And there's those moments of like her grappling with what just happened and like what she did, and like making sure that what she did has meaning, because if it doesn't, like that, is going to be a really big thing for her to live with. And like, I just really hope they don't fumble this. Like, they haven't fumbled anything so far for me, but like, this is one of those things where I think it's such an important.
I mean, it's the meaning of the whole.
It's kind of the meaning of the whole game.
Yeah. And
so
and
yeah.
And the predecessor for this. Yeah, for the second game. Like, and I think that this really, I think everything that we have seen up until this point is building you to, I mean, obviously it's the finale. It's the, it's the crescendo, but it's everything has been very intentional, just like it is in the game to show you what the whole love and like sacrifice.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I think it has to be done perfect. And I think that they will, because like literally all the other things that I was like slightly concerned about. But like they said in the chat, honestly, I trust Craig Mazin. Me too.
Retweet.
Honestly.
Retweet, yeah. And like the other thing too, and this is not a criticism by any means. It's just something that I noticed recently, that like there's not a lot of Pedro left in this show.
No.
And that's fucking devastating to me.
It is.
Like, there will be all sorts of flashbacks.
Especially
like,
the relationship that the actors have with each other.
God,
like, they gotta go. Why?
I know. Have you been watching? There's this thing that Sony released. They released 2 episodes of it. It's called Creator to Creator. It's like a round table between. I'll send you a link. It's really great. It's a round table between Neil and Craig, Pedro and Bella, and then Assad Kizilbash, who's like on the production side of
I think
Sony.
I've seen a bunch of clips on TikTok.
You probably have, yeah. And it's like a total like 20-minute conversation between the 2 videos, but they talk a lot about like their relationship, and it's like,
Did you see the really creepy comparison where they're the same age difference as Leonardo DiCaprio and his new girlfriend?
Oh God, I didn't.
It's not funny, but
oh God,
it's like there was people saying like compare, like, obviously they're like they have a very much like parental and literally Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend is the same age gap. Anyways, moving on. Sorry to ruin that.
No, that's fine. But yeah, Terry in the chat sounds amazing. It's a really cool conversation. I was like, it finished, and I was like, I just want more of this. Like, give me 3 hours of you guys just talking, because that's all I want is hearing about like filming and how they view the characters and all those things. But anyway, I'm very excited for the finale, even though it's going to be very bittersweet, because this is something that you and I have both been looking forward to for a very long time. But let us know if you're watching this later on YouTube or listening later on podcast services before episode 9 drops, what you think is going to happen, what you want. If there's any revelations like what Terry had about maybe us seeing Abby, let us know what you think, what we missed. And we'll be back next week for both Spotlight Games to talk about whatever the fuck we're going to talk about there, and Spotlight TV. And of course, Kayla will be back with Clickerbait as well, doing a deep dive. And then keep your eye out. I do definitely want to do a crossover episode. The episodes. I think that's a great idea to rank the season and just give us an excuse to talk about the whole season. Keep your eyes out for that. John, with the final prediction, they all go disco dancing. Hey, I would take it. Take it.
Plot twist. It's actually a beautiful, happy ending. And we'll see. It's going to be very, I'm curious with the people who haven't played the game. Like, I feel like it's going to be very divisive. And
it's, I'm glad you brought this up, and then we'll go, because I think that people will be, I don't think it's going to be as divisive as it was in the game.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is people are just so, rightfully so, obsessed with Pedro that they're all going to be like, of course, why that's the only option. And because I very much remember, like, the first time I finished the first game, I'm just like sitting there like, oh my God, I was the bad guy. Like, I was I don't think people are going to have that thought. I think people are going to be like, I would have done more. I would have done worse than what he does. But
I'm curious because, like, again, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like in the game, it was more clear how passionate Ellie felt about being the solution to the problem. I feel like I don't know if it's that apparent, as much apparent in the show. It is clearly her. I don't know, maybe it felt like, and so then in my thoughts at the end of the game were like, oh damn, he took that away from her.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Liz in the chat makes I would love to see where she says this, or where they say this, because what an interesting, so Bella did an interview and said it will be the most divisive episode between people that played the game versus people that didn't. Not sure what that means, but I'm curious. I too am curious. That makes me think that maybe they are changing things, and I'm scared.
Me too.
But as we've said, like, they've not missed yet. So it would be pretty surprising if the first time they missed was, well, I don't know, the biggest decision or the biggest like plot point. I don't know, maybe, but we'll see. Yeah, Liz, if you could send that to me, I would surely appreciate it. Kayla, thank you again for coming on, and at such short notice too.
Oh yes, of course, anytime. I will talk about games in The Last of Us till your ears fall off. So,
well, you're welcome anytime. But yeah, looking forward to our collab when we talk about the entire season. But until then, thanks for being here. Thanks in the chat, and for our listeners later, talk to you next time.
Bye.